I'm Carrie Ellis, author of 21st Century Superhuman Quantum Lifestyle, being called one of the most important books on the planet and guidebook for our times. I am here with you doing our 21st Century Superhuman shows today with Rob Marquez. Hey, Rob, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm already getting a lot of feedback from people. They're liking the video series that we're doing, and they can't wait for the next episode.
Awesome. Good. I really hope a lot of people get a lot from it and can, kind of start to raise their vibration so we can get this whole debt thing and everything taken care of.
Yes. So today we are going to talk about debt, since you bring that up. And I know that many, 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 many people in our modern culture struggle very deeply with debt. Some manage to have debt and manage it where they're making their little payments every month. But I know that probably a great majority just struggle and suffer with feeling the pressure of that debt over their heads, not always being able to keep up with the payments, getting kind of hammered by the system saying you've got to pay this and you've got to pay this now, or if they get behind, making threats on their credit and all of that. And I know that you have developed a very intelligent and wise way of looking at this that literally has to do what we're truly responsible for within some law. I'm not sure what law, but I think you'll tell us what law that is. And you're in the process of explaining to us about how to be really free in this system, an ancient system that has kind of kept humanity sort of subjugated, running like little rats on the wheel for really hundreds of years. And we're ready to change that now. So I appreciate and honor the amount of study that you've put in and the ability that you have to transmit. I've had people just commenting, wow, he explains that so well. I can't wait to hear what he says next. So let's talk about debt today. I'm going to let you just jump in and tell us what debt is, how it works, and how we should really begin setting ourselves up in relationship to it.
Absolutely. And I should probably start off with, I know there's some of our other videos are out there, and I did some background on there, but I should probably start off with a little more background because there are other things that I do. And one of them is I'm a silent partner for a company that disputes unsecured debts for people, okay? And within a year of building this company, we already have 400 clients. We have disputed thousands of accounts, unsecured debt accounts. And so what I'm about to tell you is very solid. Again, I don't get into a whole lot of detail of law this and law that and all this, because most people can't really grasp the technicalities of it, but I do really, really suggest that people do their research and really start to look into the things I'm saying. You don't have to take me at face value. Please just do your research, because these things that I tell you are from my experience.
So, Rob, my first question that comes up, which I think will for a lot of people, is what the heck is unsecured debt?
Right. So that's a great question, because the way I would like to divide this is there are two different types of debts that we're going to talk about. There is secured debt and there is unsecured debt. Basically, the difference between the two means that in a secured debt transaction, you put up property as collateral. So in other words, somebody says, I'm going to give you a loan. You say, I can't, pay that whole thing within a few payments, so I'll give you a piece of my property as security. That way, if I can't pay the loan, you can take my property. Okay, so things that are secured debt is anything that you give. You get a mortgage, you pledge your property to pay that loan. Your vehicle, when you get a car loan, you pledge the car to get the loan. There's many, many different secured transactions. The company that I'm a silent partner in and generated and built does strictly unsecured debt, which is things like credit cards, private student loans, certain private student loans. Some are secure, some are not. When a debt is written off, so to speak, and we're going to get into some of that. So unsecured debt is a debt that there's no property given, okay? Now, debt is usually also created by, the first thing is a contract. Okay, but what I'm going to explain to you and try to unravel is the fact that the bank that lends you money and creates this debt is not allowed to lend its own money by law. Okay, so the bank can't lend you its own money. So if the bank can't lend you its own money, it can only lend its depositors money. So where did the bank give you anything of theirs for them to make money off of in a loan? Let's just look at this very common sense. You know, that's like, Carrie, you giving to me, you know, a car, okay? And then I go, okay, well, I'm going to loan this car out to so-and-so and charge them money for it. But it's your car. I'm just loaning it out to somebody and charge them the money for it. So how does that, you know, would you go for that deal? I wouldn't go for that deal, but yet we do it every day. We sign these credit card contracts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So the bank can't, that's first, the bank can't lend its own money. So in an unsecured debt transaction, when you get a credit card, you fill out an application. I can pretty much guarantee you from this point till the day you pass on into the next, you know, life, that you're never going to see that application again, even if you ask the bank to provide it. They will never provide, I shouldn't say never, but on very rare occasion will they ever give you or show you a certified copy, which means under affidavit, under oath, that it's a true and correct copy of the original. Never. They'll give you a copy of the contract, but there'll be no signatures on it. It'll just be a random, well, this is the one you signed. Okay, but it's random. There's no signatures on it. So, okay, so now we have what you're saying is a debt and a contract that I have with you, but you cannot provide the contract. Under commercial law, the Uniform Commercial Code, you don't have a contract. We don't have a relationship. Okay, so what happens is we get caught up in thinking, oh, I borrowed something, I owe it, I have a moral obligation to pay this back. So we just went through the fact that they never gave you anything. Now they're hiding or did something with this alleged contract that they can't even provide, but yet they are killing you with interest and payments of money, what they call money, in exchange for, or you know, for what they gave you in quote unquote credit. So we get into that point too. Okay, so yeah, like
what a game. I mean,
what a game.
It's like
a
something that isn't
game.
real. It's a shell game. I love that.
It's a shell game. It's moving the pieces around so you don't know what's going on. Because right. What do? We just signs, because we can't understand all that legal language. That's why I tell everybody, buy a law dictionary.
Wow.
Buy it and study it, because you'll never be able to understand what they're talking about without knowing the language. You don't even have to, when you start studying the law dictionary, all this language becomes very easy to digest.
Wow.
Because you can't go to another country and speak their language without learning it. It's the same exact principle when you're talking about law. People think law is a mystery. It's really not.
And I know in our other series, Rob, we're talking about different types of law. Mm-hmm. And what type of law is this that the banks are writing a loan under?
Uniform Commercial Code, which is essentially governs all contracts, no matter if they're state, federal, private, public. It is the governing law of contracts.
And who made up the Universal Commercial Code, or what is it connected with?
The Uniform Commercial Code is applicable in many countries. It has different names, but it's all the same. Basically, the lawyers for the banks wrote all of this.
So
if you really get down to it and you start studying
commerce, if we talked about it in layman's terms.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of.
I'm sorry, you broke up.
Sorry, it's kind of commerce law, the law of commerce.
Yeah,
or of
absolutely. It's all
and
commerce.
Is that under Admiralty law as well, or no?
Well, it's not that it's under Admiralty, but it does fall under the protection of Admiralty when they basically came in 1933 and the banks said, hey, we don't have the people's gold anymore that they put on deposit for this fake currency we're giving them. So we need you to step in and protect us. And then the bank, and then they said, okay, now every time you go into a courtroom, what do you see? You see an Admiralty flag. You see an American flag with a gold fringe on it. That signifies an Admiralty jurisdiction. Okay, so the courts are banks too. Let's not get this twisted. You can't go into court with a quote unquote debt and go in and say, well, you know, Judge, I fell on hard times and, you know, I don't have a job. And the judge is going to go, in his mind, he's saying, I don't care. This is all about contract. You know, did you sign a contract? Do you have the rights you say you have? Because in an Admiralty court, you don't have any rights. You have benefits, or you have, you trade in your rights for privileges. So anyway, that's a whole other topic. Okay. But yes, the court system will defend the banks before they ever defend you. Okay, or stand up for your rights because you don't have any when you go in there. I know that's probably going to be hard for people to digest, but it is the absolute truth. And, you know, if that burns you, I'm sorry, but my experience proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that that is exactly what's happening.
So can you kind of
now you bring in?
Go ahead. I'll let you.
I wanted to get back to
we've kind of gotten off
credit
track
thing and the debt thing because. Yeah, so many people are suffering from it. So again, the bank comes out quick to get to the debt. What do they ask you for? When you get a debt collection letter, it will, I guarantee you, every debt collection letter will say, you've got some numbers on there, whatever your balance, quote unquote, is, with a little $sign with one line through it. Well, anyone listening to this video, I want you to go on to Google and Google the symbol for a peso, and it will come up with an S with a little line through it. So what are we talking about here when you say an amount with some numbers and this S with a line through it? Are you talking about money, US dollars, pesos? Like I said, money, what's money? They'll never ask you for money. They cannot ask you for money because there is no money, okay? Under the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, the definition of money is gold and silver.
Slow down just a little bit. You're doing great, but we're glitching the system a little bit. So
yeah, so you really have to start to understand what are they asking for, right? If you can rebut these presumptions that they're sending you, and they must provide you evidence that you're asking for. They must have clean records, and they don't. They never do. Okay, so you can rebut this stuff, and you can get the debt collectors to go away. All right, but again, getting a little bit off track. Let's bring it back to what are we really working. You know, not being able to have credit to go buy more things, you know, going to jail. Some people think they're going to go to jail, which is really not ever going to happen unless it's an IRS quote unquote debt. And that's a whole other video because that's a scam too. So what are you really afraid of? You're afraid of not having. You're afraid that I'm going to lose all of this. And you know what? Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is to lose it all. So you can realize it and go, I'm still alive. Look, I lost everything and I'm still alive. And I'm going to work off of cash and I'm going to rebuild. Then you know that, wait, this is all just a game. Because I personally don't even use credit. A credit score. I haven't used my credit report or credit score in 6 years.
And you know
what?
I've
done pretty well without it.
I've definitely walked away from debt more than once, actually, because I began understanding how unreal it really was. And I mean, at some point they just said, oh, they wanted me to have credit again and all that stuff. But I realized, like, could you go through again, just review for us how this shell game happens and works? You go to a bank, or they get you to apply for a credit card, right? And so then you're being loaned money on this credit card.
Mm-hmm. Well, not money. You're
You're
being
not
given
getting more
credit.
money. You're right. That's the mistake. So go back over this for us just one more time, very slowly, in our like little kindergarten, so our little kindergarten minds can understand.
Yes. So there is no money. Okay. Let's get that concept. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10 mandates the only money that is legal tender is gold and silver. Okay. So when they stole all of our gold and silver in 1933, they started issuing these promissory notes and called them money. Now, if you look at your Federal Reserve note in your wallet, your dollar bill, your $5 bill, it says Federal Reserve note. Well, if you look up the definition of a note in banking terms, it means a promise to pay. So if I get milk and bread and I give that the store $5 of 5 promises to pay, did I just pay him? I just gave him promises to pay, but I didn't pay him. So how can I even call that money? There's no money. It's credit and discharge, credit and discharge, credit and discharge. The way that they print money is from our good faith and credit, which boils back to the birth certificate, the Social Security account, things like that. They're using our signature to hypothecate, to create money. So while you think that the signature is so it prevents fraud, it's actually not. What they're doing with those signatures is monetizing whatever instrument you're authorizing them to print money from. Okay, so yeah, this gets really twisty. So they can't issue money. They can only issue credit. So the bank, when you go for a credit card, just gives you air on a card to go discharge something at some store because there's no money, so you can only discharge a debt with a debt, right? You can't pay a debt with a debt. So it's a big shell game. There's no money at play. None. Zero. Zilch. No money.
Wow.
Just air. It's just all
It's really amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Now, to take it as just one step further, you give them interest. Okay, the word interest. I'm giving you interest in my credit, and you're going to charge me for giving you interest. I mean, that doesn't even make sense to me. Now, when I see the word interest, I'm like, I'm not giving you interest in my property. No way. You know, so that's what interest is. Giving them interest. Now, there's banking professionals and accountants that'll probably watch this and say, that's absurd. That's not true. I've been doing this for 30 years. Oh, well, I don't mean to be, harsh, but these things are true because I've proven them. I do it every day, hundreds of accounts, so that's unsecured debt. There's no collateral. Now, when you get into talking about houses and secured debt with mortgages and promissory notes, it gets a lot deeper and a lot harder to fight because they want that more than anything. They want that property, not because of the property, but because they want another note. Okay, because what happens let's take a typical home purchase. Okay, you go into the bank, you apply for a loan. You get the loan, you pledge the house and the property as security. You sign a note. No different than the note in your back pocket, other than the fact that it's called a negotiable instrument, and the notes in your back pocket as 5s, 20s, 10s, 1s is non-negotiable. Now, we're not going to get into the details of that, but just know that that's the differences, okay? So they're non-negotiable, meaning you can't assign them to someone else, okay, because the Federal Reserve owns them. Now, your note is negotiable. You didn't make it non-negotiable, so you gave it to the bank at the closing. Okay, why did they call it a closing? Because you're closing out the transaction for the home. When you gave them that $300,000 promissory note, you just literally paid the house off. You paid the house off at the closing table. It's done. It's over. You paid it off. That's why it's called closing. They close that account. Then they do a secondary transaction called a mortgage, right? And I say mortgage because the Latin meaning of that is mort means death and gage means pledge. So you just handed them a death pledge, okay, called a mortgage. It's a completely separate transaction, okay? That is a separate loan that's hypothecated, but yet you've pledged the house for it. Now they just took that note for $300,000, and because it's negotiable, they're going to sell that, and they're going to make a few million off of your $300,000. Then the next guy that they assign it to and send it to or sell it to, he's going to go ahead and make a couple million off it as well. And then the next guy's going to do so. All these people are making millions of dollars off of your home, and you're stuck for 30 years making payments on a house that you paid off at closing. But yet they're making millions by just signing the back of it.
Oh.
And here you are paying for 30 years. Yeah, paying 3 times the amount of this house, being a slave, thinking, oh, yeah, I gotta do what's morally right. And they just robbed you blind and made millions off of you and signed you up into a secondary loan agreement called a mortgage that you're stuck in for 30 years. That's how that game is played.
So Rob, we've started on 2 paths here. One is what happens with credit cards or unsecured credit. And the other thing is what happens with a mortgage, which is secured against the house, correct? For the property.
Yeah.
So let's come back to the unsecured debt, which is our credit card debt, which is not even based on anything real. It's sort of a fabricated idea of it value. And we are constantly paying interest or making payments on this imagined value from our hard-earned money. So that I don't even know if that money is real at this point, right?
It's really not, but that's another conversation.
That's a whole other conversation. I'm so excited that you're working towards getting a site opened up where you'll literally be able to help people step by step with this stuff. And I'm wondering if in your debt resolution thing that you do right now, will you be able to help people with this? Do we have a link we can put under this video if people want?
You could go. Yeah, you can go to infinityconsumerservices.com.
Okay, and we'll put that under the video. Sorry.
We'll put it under the video.
Go ahead, say that one more
And
time.
keep in mind that...
Sorry, I'm going to put you back up. I've got a thunderstorm here, so we're glitching a little bit. But yeah, go ahead and repeat the website. Okay. Let me turn myself off here.
It's in www.infinityconsumerservices.com. And it's a 35% fee of the overall debt. But it doesn't mean, I don't want to make anybody disillusioned here. It doesn't mean the debt is just going to go away. Okay, 90% of the time we're able to handle it and get the debt collectors to forfeit because they can't prove that they have an ownership right to anything. Okay, but 10% of the time it goes to lawsuit, at which time we turn the client over to a attorney firm that will do a debt settlement type of scenario. So, and at that point we credit the client back because we're not going to make them pay us for something we ultimately didn't handle. So, but you will be stuck paying that particular credit card on a certain payment plan or whatever the attorney could work out. That's 10% of the time. Okay. Now, you can do this process completely yourself. Okay. But you got to know the steps. And again, that would be another video and hopefully again on my website.
We're going to be working in that direction. But let's just go back right now. Okay. We're understanding how maybe unrealistic this system is that we have allowed ourselves to kind of be drawn into and that we've become willing participants in, but it may not be of the best idea that we should be doing this. But how do we, when we want to start changing our position in relationship to our debt, what kind of things do we need to do with our thinking? What do we need to, what do we do with our life? What do we do with that debt?
Well,
besides going through the whole big process that you do, if say a person is just listening to this and they go, God, I've actually known, I've had friends who are so crushed by the load of debt they have. They know they can't keep up with it. And they just kind of don't even know hardly how to keep going on a day-to-day basis. I've literally heard of people taking their lives because of this. So it's almost like we're living in the days of Charles Dickens or something, it's a very, very, very oppressive system in many ways. And this is not a holistic, healthy system. It is an unhealthy system. So with everything you just told us about the unrealisticness of that debt anyway, what do we do with our mind? What do we do with our thinking process? What do we do with our daily life in relationship to this? Just in a simple way, just pretend I'm in first grade, okay? Because otherwise it's an overload. Yeah.
Yeah. The first thing you have to do is change your thinking. You have to get over feeling like you have a moral obligation to pay this bank that didn't loan you anything and did a ton of underhanded things, okay, because they play on your ignorance. So the first thing is getting over the fact that, hey, I don't owe you anything because you can't even prove it if I knew enough to make you prove it, okay? So let go of that stress that you owe somebody something first. Second is they have nothing but fear and intimidation to use against you because they know you're ignorant. So they will threaten you. They will send you, you're going to be in a lawsuit, we're going to sue you, blah, 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 and they will. But what are you going to lose from that? Now, I will tell you what you can lose. If you are sued on an unsecured debt and you have an employer, then they can garnish your wages in some states. If you're self-employed, you're not going to garnish yourself. So it doesn't matter if they sue you. Your credit score will plummet, yes. So you got to deal with that. So what do? You go to the bank, you use cash, and you get a debit card. You can use that like a credit card as long as there's cash in there. Maybe you have to rethink how you're living. Maybe you got to simplify.
So all this that you're saying, right?
Status quo.
Yeah. So all this that you're saying right now, are we thinking a person is going to stop making the payments on that debt? Is that like the assumption that we're making? Okay. So, and I've done that. So I actually know what that's like. And
yeah,
first time
you can continue to make those payments, but you're going to put yourself.
Well, yeah. The first time I did it, I lived in abject terror. I'd get up in the morning afraid. I'd be like, what's going to happen to me? Who's going to come after me? What are they going to do to me? And then I did it a second time. I won't do it again. I'm not accumulating more debt, but I was dumb enough to be in the system in the first place doing that. And then I did it a second time, and I just knew that it was a corrupt system, that I had learned that it was a system that was not really real, that it was kind of made up. And I began relating differently to it. But so you're saying if a person can't make their payments, or they make a choice that they don't want to continue making their payments, we're kind of making that assumption with these ideas we're talking about, right? Okay.
Yeah. If you don't want to continue making your payments, yes, you can be sued. Yes, your credit score will plummet. You're not going to jail. Okay. There's no debtor's prison. They're trying to bring them back. Don't get me wrong, but they haven't done that yet. And I seriously doubt people are going to allow that to get pushed through. You're not going to jail. You just have to rethink your life. What matters most to you? Being a slave and trying to pay someone that didn't give you anything? Or rethinking, minimizing, cutting down, maybe moving into a smaller house, maybe, getting rid of all the things that you're dragging around your whole life, all these knickknacks and things. Maybe you sell that, whatever you got to do. Because life is not meant to be lived under the thumb of someone who is controlling you based off the fact that they really don't have anything to control you with other than that, So yeah, it really is a change of mindset and a letting go. I can guarantee you, if you do let go of your payments and your credit score plummets, I can send you to the best guy I've ever seen in credit restoration, who was trained by the credit bureau managers on exactly how to remove things. He removed 13 liens from a guy's credit report in one dispute letter. 13 liens. Okay, so he's very good. The whole credit reporting thing is a scam. Okay, it's not the end of the world. You just need to restructure your life, and you've got to stop worrying about these people are coming to get me. Okay. Again, I'm not saying you should stop paying or whatever. If you work for someone and they could sue you and garnish your wages. What I will tell you is there is a way, and if you continue to search for it, you'll find it, because there are companies out there that will help you. Actually, there's not many. We're one of the very few, if the only, that are set up the way we are. But you really do have to change your mindset. You've got to not be afraid to not have material things. It's just material things. You know, if the house and the car and the glam and the glitz means more to you, then you get all the stress and all the headache and all the worry that comes along with that.
And Rob, I know that there's a lot of people who live very conventionally and believe that people should pay their debts.
If the debt exists.
Well, there are people that believe, they haven't come to this point of looking at things the way we are. So they believe the debt does exist. They believe if you're an honorable person, you should be paying your debt. So I think people who make the kind of choice to do what we're talking about doing may feel there's a little bit of a stigma, well, other people in society, like my family or, who knows who, may be looking at me thinking that I'm not such a good person. But I think what you are trying to reveal to us, and through all of your work and through these shows and through your upcoming website, is the falseness of this system that we're living in, and how we really have to start taking action to move ourselves beyond it. And I really value that. I think this is really valuable information because of that. And I know there's many people who, in desperation, are just looking for answers because they can't keep up with this false debt system. Pay more interest, pay more interest, pay more interest. And they're afraid to walk away from it. They're afraid to have bad credit. They're afraid to not have credit available to them. And they're afraid of what might happen if they do walk away. So again, I think that's kind of the swirl that we're dealing with here that will be going around in people's heads.
Yeah, and I'd like to address that too. I mean, I had to go through that, but I'm the kind of person that, if you're going to judge me for the things that I do and not know me for who I am, I don't need you in my life anyway. I don't care if you are my family, then maybe you're not my family. That means more to me than worrying about someone pointing the finger saying I'm immoral or, I'm irresponsible. Because I will tell you now, if you talk to anyone that knows me in my life, they will probably tell you I'm one of the most responsible, respectful, and honorable people you'll ever meet. Hands down.
I will vouch for that. I mean, you really are. You're a great person. You're very direct, straight up, and and I know that you're doing this work for humanity. I think it's also important for us to address, because I'm working with 21st century superhuman ideas all the time. How are we moving beyond an old civilization? Are we able to be creative beings in our lives? Or are we just working so hard just to pay the man that we've lost our creativity, we've lost our vision, we've lost our sense of purpose, or the beauty of who we are and what we're here to express. And this is what this work that we're doing, that you're doing, that I'm doing, we would like to see people reclaiming their sense of how to live a joyful life, how to live a life where their own true passion and creativity can come into being, and they can begin working on things that really matter, because that's what it's going to take for us to create a more intelligent civilization. And I think that thing is like people having a noose around their necks, literally.
Absolutely. And that's why it was created, to strip us of our creativity, because if we became the creative beings that we truly are, these people who are the elite who designed this whole system would not be able to control it. And they're losing control very fast because people are waking up to who they are, what their power is, what their value is, the fraud of the system that these people have created, the Oz, so to speak, never mind the man behind the curtain. That's what we're taught. Never mind the man behind the curtain. But a lot of this is very common sense, but we're so used to being filled with all of this, jargon and, complexities and like you say, keeping us on, nose to the grindstone that we can't even use common sense to ask the right questions because we're just too worried about losing our home, losing our food, losing the clothes on our back, all those things. So it's a great design, whoever designed it, for them, but we need to move beyond that. It's time.
Yes. Well, Rob, we've probably got about 10 more minutes here. Let's just talk a little bit about, I think it takes a lot of courage to make the decision to move beyond the formal matrix system that has been designed for us to live in for so long. And that kind of courage, let's just say a person is really suffering with this debt hanging over their head, unsecured debt, we'll call it credit card debt for lack of, to be really direct about what kind of debt it is. It's unsecured, and we're basically talking mostly about credit card debt. Is that correct? Are you there? Oh.
Yep.
Okay. So, so we're basically talking about credit card debt and unsecured credit card debt, right? Should we be talking about that right now? And the mortgage thing is a little bit different.
Yeah, the mortgage thing's a tough thing to battle because the courts are in bed with the banks. The attorneys work for the court, and I've seen the best of the best try to win these things and get kicked out of their home anyway, even my own parents, who proved with forensic accounting that the whole thing was a fraud. And the court still said, oh, sorry, bye.
Wow.
You're out. They don't care. They don't care about you. They really don't. They care about the interest of the bank to protect the bank. And they use military might to do that, which is what the Admiralty law and the flag and all that's all about.
Right. So let's just go back to, let's say someone is getting up the courage to walk away from unsecured debt, which is credit card debt.
Or let's even talk about walking away from a home.
Okay. So let's just talk about that a little bit. What kind of things happen? And you were getting into it somewhat, that we simplify our lives, that we decide, okay, I'm going to be okay with getting along without credit, which is a way that I live as well as you. And there's a lot of freedom in that. I've simplified my life. I get along without being able to charge things. I don't have any interest in charging things. I don't have any interest in putting that pressure on myself again. It just seems ridiculous. And I'm happy with simpler things, with things that cost less. I'm a great thrift store shopper. There's so many ways that we can operate in the system. But anyway, go ahead. I want to turn it over to you and say, what other ways what does a person do when they make these kind of choices? Okay.
The first thing really is faith. If you say, well, I'm real connected spiritually and or religiously and really connected to God. And well, if you are, then you know what faith is. And faith is no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay because I'm taken care of. That is faith. So I had to get into that mindset. I left my home. I let them take it. While I wasn't making payments on that home and waiting for the foreclosure, I was saving my money to downsize to go rent somewhere. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready. Just go ahead and do a recap for how we want people to think. How would you encourage people to think? Reducing, what we have, simplifying our lives, finding a place to rent. Go ahead and tell it in order to start living outside the debt system.
Okay. The first thing that, of course, I had to realize was faith. Okay. Faith is knowing that things are really tough, really rough. Okay. And who knows what the other side looks like. It's scary as hell, but I'm going to be okay because the universe, God, the creator, whatever you call it, has my back.
if you're truly a spiritual person, a religious person, whatever term you want to use, that is what faith is. So try to calm down and start thinking, okay, if I'm not paying my mortgage, they're going to take my home. So what do I have to deal with? I have to deal with, my neighbors, my friends, my family, all looking at me like I'm, a failure. Well, that's something you're going to have to get over. You're not a failure. You're just a product of the system. While you're not paying the mortgage and waiting for the foreclosure, you can be saving that money for a rental home. There are tons of rentals. And if you go with, you go on Facebook or on Craigslist or something like that, and you find a rental where you can actually meet the owner instead of a management company, you've got a lot better chance. That's how I've done it. I've always had heart-to-hearts with the owners and never had a problem renting after I lost my home, okay? So if you have unsecured debt and you're facing lawsuits, you're not going to go to jail. The repercussion of that is you could face wage garnishment if you work for someone. If you don't work for someone, you're not going to garnish yourself, so it doesn't matter what judgment they put on you. In all instances, even if you claim bankruptcy, you're going to have poor credit. That can be repaired too if you find the right repair guy. There are things that can be done. So really you have to stop, breathe, look around you, find out what's important to you, who is important to you, because even if your own family denounces you, sometimes you got to make decisions. I had to. There's members of my family that think I'm crazy. They don't know what happened to me. But that's okay. I don't need that in my life. And if they want to look at me like that, family or not, oh well, So you really have to use your mind and think about, what am I going to do? I've got a family I've got to take care of. I got to keep the money coming in, and we need to reduce things and just cut out the extra garbage. That's really what you need to do. And stop worrying. We're all facing, or we all have faced, this type of thing. And if we haven't yet, that's because we haven't yet woken up. This is the straw that breaks the camel's back to waking up to what is really going on. This is what the universe is throwing at everyone. And soon, if the system collapses the way they're supposed to collapse it, there's going to be a lot of people in the same boat. So your friends and family won't be calling you a failure anymore, because they're going to be in the same boat. Okay, so what we need to do is stop worrying and start figuring out what is actually going on. And I'm here to help with that. That's where I come in, to try to help people understand what exactly is going on and how we can heal this.
So Rob, we have options. One is the company that you're part of that helps people resolve debt in a more kind of official way, so to speak. And then another option might be for a person to just clean up their life, simplify, and walk away. And I know that there was a time when I went into a debt relief site and I filled out all these papers and I sent them into all the banks, like proving that there wasn't really a real debt. And I think when I talked to you, you said to me that wasn't necessarily the best way. I mean, I never really seemed to get a lot of resolution out of that, and I did a lot of work on it.
Yeah. It's really not. I mean, debt consolidation and debt settlement and all those mechanisms were created by the bank. So ultimately, what are you really going to get out of it? What we do is, outside the bank, we dispute the debt on your behalf. We create records under notary presentment, it's called. We offer payment to them. And under the commercial law, if you tender payment, which is an offer to pay, and they refuse it, that means all the debt has to be discharged, interest and everything, under UCC Article 8. I believe it's Article 8. Okay, so we use that stuff, and it works. But yeah, that would be one way you could do it. Consolidation, all that, even bankruptcy. I mean, it's all made up by them, and it works to their advantage. And you wind up still struggling. I just got to a point where I realized it was all a game, and I said, I don't care. I'm being taken advantage of every day of my life. I am missing time with my family, my son. I have no life. I can't be creative anymore, do the things I enjoy, because I'm being, quote unquote, so responsible and I can't let these bills go, you know, but I realized that, okay, once I saw the hard line facts that I'm being taken advantage of, that role changed, because I am being responsible by educating myself and asking them to prove up. That's responsible. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Rob, I think we're going to have to call it a night. And I want to say thank you so much for helping us understand a little more about the maybe brokenness of this system and how we can begin to free ourselves, because that's really the bottom line of what we're talking about here. I want to thank our 21st Century Superhuman listening audience, and those, please share us with your friends, let others know, and we'll put some great links under this video. You'll be able to find Rob and connect with the work that he's doing, and his website coming up soon that will have the ability for you to join a membership and be able to work on, learn how to do these things for yourself. So Rob, any last words of wisdom for us?
No, other than what I already stated, I'll restate: just have faith and know that everything's going to be okay, and know that you're not immoral and you're not a failure and you're a beautiful being of light, and all of this will work out. Just
I love
stay
it.
positive.
I love it that that's the place you're coming from, and really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank everybody for being here with us, and we will see you on the next 21st Century Superhuman show. And Rob, we're going to see you soon on our ongoing series on how to understand the system and how to work to free ourselves within it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Carrie.
Okay, you're so welcome. Much love to all. Many blessings. We shall see you soon.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.